Today we're going to be having a look at how an angel pierces Padre Pio's heart with a weapon. This happens in a vision. It's called the transverberation. But why did this happen? What is the meaning? Is it even something real or just a mystical phenomenon? So do stay tuned to find out more about this. Hello friends, and welcome to this channel where we look at the life of our great saint Padre Pio, who was a Capuchin friar. He was a mystic, a tremendous miracle worker. Do stay tuned to find out more about his life and to see what his intercession could do for you. We encourage everyone, because we have a Mass every Friday, we bring your intentions to Padre Pio in this Mass. If you want your intentions included, just see the video on the end screen, how to enroll your intentions. And we do encourage everyone to be part of our Padre Pio apostolate. It will be tremendous if you'll help by liking the video, sharing the video with your friends and with your colleagues. And we're looking at the mystical piercing of the heart with a lance. And apparently this is a very rare phenomenon that only occurs to a handful of the greatest saints. For instance, Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, Saint Therese of the Infant Jesus, Saint Philip Neri, and of course Padre Pio have all experienced this phenomena of the transverberation. But of course, what is it? What does it involve? So let's have a look at the definition, or the explanation rather, of the Great Mystic of Carmel, Saint John of the Cross. This is how he describes it, the transverberation. He says the soul is inflamed with the love of God, and the soul then feels a seraph, an angel, attack her, the soul, with an arrow or with a dart, all incandescent in the fire of love, transverberating right throughout the soul. It is ignited like an ember, or better, like a living flame. And he says it cauterizes in a sublime way. St. John of the Cross continues, in that moment the soul is cauterized, or the soul is pierced by an arrow. The inner flame impetuously bursts forth and rises upwards with a vehemence as in a blazing oven, or when a bonfire is stirred up and stoked and ignites into flame. And the soul, being wounded by this fiery dart, feels the wound, he says, but with great delight. In addition to being stirred up by great gentleness, that fiery and impetuous flight that the seraph causes in the soul leads to great fervor and to loving ecstasy. And then he says, at the same time, the soul feels this penetrating wound and the force of the poison with which that arrow carries, like a sharp point, to bury itself right in the substance of the spirit and to pierce the the most intimate part of the soul. So although it sounds a wonderful and good thing, and it really is, it also brings with it unprecedented suffering. For there is only this meaning, he tells us, in this enlargement of the heart, and that is to love more. And to love as Christ loved, his love for which the greatest proof was his surrender to be nailed on the wood of the cross. And so that is the description of St. John of the Cross on the transverberation. Certainly something physical. He says something extremely painful. In Padre Pio's case, it opened a chest wound, a wound in the side of his chest. But the important thing, the outcome, was greater love. So as we say, this was precisely what happened to Padre Pio. It occurred in August of 1918, even before the visible stigmata appeared on Padre Pio. It is worth noting, of course, that this grace is strongly linked to the passion of Jesus. And the transverberation is in fact God's loving invitation to certain select souls. It's an opportunity for them to take part in the work of redemption as kind of co-redemptors with our Lord. Because he asked one of his disciples, one of his apostles, can you drink the cup that I must drink? and he's offering this to Padre Pio. So let us see now from his letters how Padre Pio himself describes what happened to him, what he has to say. It's taken from various letters and diaries. Padre Pio tells us, I was hearing confession of the boys of the college, and he relates this to his spiritual director, when suddenly I was seized with an extreme horror at the sight of a celestial personage, an angel, which presented himself in the eyes of the intellect. He had in his hand an artifice of the shape of a long iron blade, with a sharp point which seemed all on fire. He says, watching all of this and seeing the aforementioned character suddenly violently drive this instrument right into my soul, Padre Pio says, it was something extreme. After that, with difficulty, I managed to groan in desperate agony. I felt like I was dying, he said. And I asked the boy whose confession he was hearing if he could leave because he felt so bad. He didn't have the strength to continue. And his martyrdom, he says, lasted until the morning of the 7th, some time later, some days later. But what I suffered during this period was more than I can explain, Padre Pio says. I even saw my viscera, my insides being ripped and torn apart with that instrument. And everything was now put to the test. Since then, Padre Pio says, I have been mortally wounded. And I feel in the very depths of my soul a wound that is always open and continuously makes me suffer. And it wasn't something obvious or clearly good to Padre Pio, because it got him to wondering, is this not some punishment inflicted by the divine justice? So it was confusing. Was God punishing him? Father Augustino, who was his confessor, attests to the truth, to the veracity of this phenomenon, and he describes it in his diary, that Padre Pio felt his heart physically being torn apart, and that in fact there was blood flowing. And he says the blood came partly from Padre Pio's mouth and partly from the chest wound. It's a physical reality, very painful. In another letter to Padre Benedetto, Padre Pio says that the agony increased more and more, and I feel immersed in an ocean of fire. Imagine how painful that is, an ocean of fire. The wound that was opened in me bleeds non-stop. And this alone, he says, would be enough to cause me 1,000 deaths. My God, he asked, why don't I die? Can't you see that for that soul you have wounded, life has become a real torment? The extreme pain of the wound that is always opened and makes me annoyed against my will. It drives me out of my mind, he says, drives me to delirium, but I find myself powerless to resist. And so, in this way, through this transverberation, Padre Pio had taken another step into that transfiguration which Saint Paul himself describes in his letter, that it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So this is the journey the saint was taking, being transformed into Christ himself mystically. We do ask you to join us next time. We'll have another video on the life and times of our great saint Padre Pio. Do join us for that. Our videos come out 3 times a week, which is Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday. If you're not receiving reminders of our videos, then do make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Click the subscribe button just below, and after subscribing you have to click that reminder bell. It's absolutely free to subscribe to our channel, so please do go ahead and subscribe.